Welcome back to Askewed Reviews. And after dealing with a little bit of a sore throat, we are finally continuing our theme week of 80s adventure kid teams. This one is also a viewer request, and it is for the 1987 film, The Monster Squad. Here is your trivia question for today. What is the movie just coming to theaters that Sean really wants to see? The answer will be at the end of this episode. So our film starts off sometime in the past, where Abraham Van Helsing is trying to do everything he can to stop Dracula and his evil forces. Van Helsing discovers an amulet that when a precise incantation is said, a portal will open up and suck all of the evil into limbo. Unfortunately, everything goes wrong, and Van Helsing is the one who gets pulled into the portal instead. Now, since the amulet can only be used every 100 years, some of Van Helsing's people have taken it and put it somewhere in America. After 100 years, Dracula has finally discovered where the amulet is and goes to seek it out. But he's not alone, as along with Dracula, he also will be accompanied by the Wolfman, the Gill Man, the Mummy, and Frankenstein's monster. So, with Van Helsing not being available, who's going to save the day from these monsters? Will it be the local police department? Perhaps a teacher? Maybe a parent? Or even the scary German guy next door? Or even, perhaps, a group of kids that actually believe in monsters? Well, whoever it might be, will they actually be able to open the portal correctly this time? This movie was directed by Fred Decker. Decker was just finishing up on the movie Night of the Creeps when this film was greenlit. In fact, he made a little nod to the movie he was about to do, as some of the graffiti in the bathroom says, "Go Monster Squad." Now, the way that the Monster Squad came about is because Decker had been toying with the idea of making a reboot of either the Little Rascals or one of the Universal monsters. One night, while he was watching Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, he made the realization that he could just combine them, and then he hired his roommate, Shane Black, to write the screenplay. This movie has no relation, though, to the Monster Squad television series from 1976. That series is about a bunch of wax figures that come to life and battle evil. Shane Black's original concept for the opening sequence would have cost so much money it probably would have doubled the budget. His idea was that Van Helsing was going to be accompanied by hundreds of zeppelins and hundreds of men on horseback storming Dracula's castle. TriStar Pictures made this film, which of course caused a bit of an issue due to the fact that Universal still owned all the licenses to all of their monsters. So what TriStar did is make some small alterations to all of their creatures. Universal Dracula has a little bit of a widow's peak, while their version did not. Universal's Frankenstein has bolts on his neck, while this one has bolts on his temples. Universal's Wolfman has regular human ears, while this one has pointed ears. Universal had the creature from the Black Lagoon, which looked very amphibian, while this one, although they had to change the name to the Gill Man, does look amphibian but a bit more fish-like. And finally, Universal's Mummy looked kind of like a wrinkly person, while this version looks more like a decaying person. In 2006, Wizard magazine made a list of 100 greatest villains of all time. Dracula was number 30, and what's interesting is they used the picture of Duncan Rager's version. Rager, by the way, wasn't the only actor up for the role of Dracula. So was Liam Neeson. Now, when Liam Neeson didn't get the role, they actually originally asked him to come in and play the human version that would go around the town needing help, called Alucard, which also happens to be Dracula backwards. Now, whether those scenes were filmed or not, they did not end up in the final version of the movie. In case you were curious, the man underneath the Frankenstein makeup is actor Tom Noonan. Rager and Noonan never broke character in front of the kids. Also, throughout the entire production, Rager never wore the fangs and red contacts until that scene was actually filmed. The reason for this is Ashley Banks, who plays Phoebe, was supposed to scream when she saw him. And boy did she, because she was not expecting that. Did you happen to know that the Wolfman's face is actually modeled after special effects artist Stan Winston? Tom Woodruff Jr., who worked on some of the makeup for this film, overheard that they had not cast the Gill Man yet and offered to put on the suit. He enjoyed it so much and apparently did such a good job that he continued to be a suit actor for many years afterward. Michael Reed McKay, who played the Mummy, recalls seeing the ad, looking for an extremely thin actor on the verge of anorexia. McKay knew that he had found his role. Andre Gower, who plays Sean, was not the only actor up for the role, so was Seth Green. Andre Gower and Robbie Kiger were actually friends in real life before this production started. Brent Calum, who played Horace, unfortunately, tragically died from pneumonia in 1997. The actor who played Eugene was Michael Faustino, and you may not know all of his work too well, but you probably know his older brother, David Faustino, who primarily played Bud on Married with Children. Here's something interesting you may not have noticed before, but Mary Ellen Trainor plays the mother in this film. She also happens to play the mother in a very similar film called The Goonies. Jason Hervey plays the bully EJ in this movie, but you might recognize him more as the older brother from the Wonder Years. Dustin Diamond originally had a role in the film, but it was cut. He was originally going to play a boy that was trying to sell baseball cards. The sequence of Phoebe meeting Frankenstein's monster is supposed to be an homage to a very similar scene in the original Frankenstein movie, although not as tragic. The plane near the beginning of the film has Browning written on the side. This is actually a nod to Todd Browning, the director of the original 1931 Dracula. The address of the home where Dracula finds the amulet is 666 Shadowbrook Road. I feel that one's a bit on the nose as to something's going to go down here. But also, in the scene where they show that on the map, there is also a college nearby called Cheney College, which is an homage to Lon Chaney Jr., who played the original Wolfman. The original plan for this film was actually to start a franchise. Unfortunately, the film was a bit of a flop, but it did gain quite the cult status. Now, what's interesting is in 2010, there were talks of a remake with Platinum Dunes. Apparently, producer on this film, Rob Cohen, was going to be the director for it, and it was going to be written by Mark and Brian Gunn. Whether fortunately or unfortunately, that movie never got made. So when it comes to the film The Monster Squad, this is definitely a movie that I continually watched when I was a child, and I loved it so much. Rewatching it, I do have to say, it's still really fun to watch, but there are quite a few inconsistencies, but that doesn't stop it from being entertaining. So I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. Two questions I have for everyone. Did anyone else, like me, want to desperately be Ryan Lambert's character of Rudy as a child? And number two, who to this day still remembers the line, Wolfman's got nards? Now, if you did enjoy this movie and are looking for other movies that feel similar to it, I would recommend The Goonies, Transylvania 6 5000, Waxwork, and Once Bitten. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, what is the movie just coming to theaters that Sean really wants to see? So he manages to sneak a peek of some of this from the roof of his house, but he wants to watch Groundhog Day Part 12, which of course is a fictional horror movie. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews, and if there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments.